The action plan seeks to actively engage members to be involved in electoral politics in the NDP. Well, I don't want to suggest that we should ignore the gains and victories of a social democratic political party with a pro-labor ideology. I would like to echo Brother Early's remarks in his board report. He argues that it's time to have an honest reevaluation of our union's relationship with the NDP. In their race to become another liberal party, they have left the working class stranded at the altar. Now, make no mistake, the NDP has introduced significantly progressive legislation while in government in various provinces, but the party's ideology is consistently at odds with reality, and this is backed up with irrefutable evidence. In Canada, there has been over 40 years of historical experience with NDP governments at the provincial level. This allows us to see the trajectory of the party's orientation towards organized labor. And this experience strongly suggests that the party's policy interest in labor concerns has diminished to such an extent that the NDP has been a key component in the very implementation of public sector austerity. And this is a phenomenon that is made much easier due to the legitimacy lent to the party by unions such as CUPE. So I'm sure most of you are aware of the experience of Bob Rae in Ontario in the early 90s and his program of fiscal restraint. And, in many ways, he was the original author of public sector austerity in Ontario. This was made possible, of course, through the Social Contract Act, which cut public spending and decimated collective bargaining rights in a way that's much worse than the current Liberal government's attempts to freeze wages through consultation. In Saskatchewan, when the Romano government was elected in '91, it lowered taxes and royalties in the resource sector, hospitals were closed, education budgets were reduced, caps were placed on social assistance rates, striking nurses were legislated back to work in 1999, minimum wage rates were lowered to one of the lowest in the country, tax incentives and deregulation were introduced to attract business investment to the province. In 1999, in Manitoba, when Gary Dewar was elected Premier of Manitoba, he cut taxes, he reduced revenues, he continued to freeze on social assistance rates initiated by the previous Conservative government, he introduced balanced budget legislation, and consistently refused to support the introduction of anti-scav laws. In BC, after 1975, the NDP government of David Barrett intervened in several strikes by passing back-to-work legislation. In 1991, the NDP government of Mike Harcourt was elected on a platform committed to public expenditure restraint. That's another word for public sector austerity. When Harcourt was replaced by Glenn Clark in 1996, taxes were cut, business was courted, spending was reduced in the public service, public sector jobs were cut, social assistance eligibility criteria was tightened, and a public sector wage freeze was introduced. Does that sound familiar? Of course it does, it's public sector austerity, right? In 2009, the NDP was elected to government in Nova Scotia on a platform of public expenditure restraint. A cut in provincial income tax rates followed. There was a de-indexing of the public service, defined benefit pension plan. There was an introduction of a 5-year public sector wage control program that capped increases. So the NDP government of Darrell Dexter in Nova Scotia is effectively waging war on public sector pensions. Now, given these facts, this litany of evidence over 5 provinces in 40 years, the enduring commitment of this union to the NDP needs to be explained and reassessed in a sober way. And it's time to seriously ask ourselves, to what extent is our uncritical support for this party actually impeding the capacity of CUPE to wage a serious fight back against austerity? So for those brothers and sisters who are fuming at me right now, I'm not doing this out of malice, it's just out of love for CUPE, Sure, we can hold the party's feet to the fire, especially when its relationship to labor is strained, but it's not the same thing as pushing our union leadership in a more radical direction. Labor's constituency is always labor. The NDP's is business and labor. So to conclude, I'm not suggesting an outright rejection of the NDP. What I'm saying is the tail shouldn't wag the dog. We need to tell them our demands, seek solid commitments from the NDP, not the other way around. Thanks.
honestly listening.
I have 3 points that I want to speak on. The first one is until I get an